There is a sacred silence that surrounds the moments nobody sees. A stillness where the real work begins. Not in front of the crowd, not under lights, not on the timeline, but in the shadows. When the noise fades, when the applause dies, when it's just you and the decision, do I stay the same or do I become something more? This is the hour of transformation. Not the kind that gets noticed, but the kind that builds unshakable character. Because the truth is, greatness is never born in the spotlight, it's forged in the unseen. While others sleep, while they scroll, while they stall, you rise, quietly, relentlessly. You're not here to impress, you're here to evolve. And evolution demands isolation. Not because you don't belong with others, but because you must belong to yourself first. You must build the strength to stand alone, to train without witnesses, to sacrifice without recognition, to do the work when no one is clapping because you're not performing. You're becoming. The world will celebrate what you reveal, but it will never know what it cost you in the dark. And that is where your advantage lives, because in the dark you become honest, raw, stripped of ego. You see yourself clearly, not who you pretend to be, but who you actually are. Every flaw, every fear, every excuse, but also every ounce of potential. And that's the moment you must decide. Will you run from it or rise into it? Most run. They numb it with noise, with comfort, with distraction. But those who rise, they turn silence into strategy. They turn wounds into wisdom. They turn isolation into identity. Because transformation begins not with action, but with awareness. You can't change what you won't confront, and you can't confront what you're afraid to see. So look in the mirror, not for aesthetics, for truth. What habits are holding you hostage? What beliefs have kept you broke? What identities are you still clinging to that were built on survival, not destiny? You can't outrun who you pretend to be, but you can outgrow who you used to be. And growth, real, lasting, inner growth is ugly at first. It's lonely, it's thankless, it's misunderstood, but it is glorious on the other side. Mindset isn't just motivation, it's armor, it's weaponry. It's the internal code that governs how you respond to pressure. Most people wait for life to get easier. Winners train to become stronger. They don't need life to lighten up. They sharpen their tools until they can carry the weight. Because pressure doesn't break the prepared, it reveals them. You can't just think positive. You must train your thoughts. Catch them. Question them. Rewire them. When your mind says, I can't, respond with who says. When it says, I'm not ready, answer, when did you decide that? Because that's the power of inner transformation. You stop accepting every thought as truth and start choosing which thoughts get to live. That's mastery. And it starts while nobody is watching, while you're journaling instead of complaining, while you're meditating instead of scrolling, while you're reading instead of gossiping, while you're creating instead of comparing. These are the hidden hours, the compound moments, the sacred grind no one sees, but everyone will feel when the time comes. Belief is your blueprint. If you believe you're average, you'll never demand excellence. If you believe you're broken, you'll reject healing. If you believe your past defines you, you'll repeat it. But if you believe, truly believe, that something powerful lives inside you, that belief alone can burn down every lie that's ever been spoken over you, your belief must become louder than your trauma, louder than your fear, louder than your old identity. And that belief, it doesn't come from likes or validation. It comes from evidence, from keeping promises to yourself, from doing what you said you'd do when it's hard, boring, inconvenient. Confidence isn't given. It's earned in private, earned in cold mornings and silent rooms, earned in the gym before sunrise, earned in the books while others party, earned in the lonely decision to rise again. And every time you do, you carve a new belief. I am not who I was. I am building someone new. I am becoming unstoppable. That's the kind of belief that moves mountains because it first moved you. Clarity comes next. Because without clarity, effort is wasted. You can hustle, grind, push, but if you don't know where you're going, you'll end up lost just faster. Clarity is the compass, and it is not given. It's created. Created in solitude, created in reflection, created by asking the hard questions. What do I truly want? What matters to me, not them? What am I willing to suffer for? Because that's what purpose really is. The pain you choose. The price you're willing to pay for the future you believe in. And when you get clear on that, distractions dissolve, doubt disappears. Discipline becomes natural, not because it's easy, but because it's essential to what you're building. You're not disciplined because you love pain. You're disciplined because you're clear on the reward. And that reward, it starts showing up not all at once, but in whispers, in how you carry yourself, in the energy you radiate, in the people you attract, in the opportunities that find you. Not because you announced yourself to the world, but because you rebuilt yourself in silence. That's what transformation looks like, invisible until it's undeniable. And once you've found clarity, the path becomes sacred. Every step forward isn't just movement, it's alignment. Every routine, every choice, every small act of effort becomes a ritual. Not for the world, for you. Because this isn't just about changing your life, it's about changing your identity. You don't need to pretend anymore. You don't need to be loud. You don't need to explain your silence. You just need to walk. Walk like someone who's seen their future self and refuses to let them down. Walk like someone who no longer negotiates with their lower nature. Walk like someone who knows. Discipline is devotion. And when the world tries to pull you back, when people don't understand, when your old life calls you like a siren, you stay steady. Because the new you doesn't argue with the past. The new you acts. That's what separates those who transform in silence from those who die in noise, the action. Not the wish, not the vision board, not the talking, but the action. Quiet, consistent, often boring, deeply sacred action. While they laugh, you work. While they doubt, you deliver. While they party, you prepare. Not because you think you're better, but because you know you're becoming. And that is the quiet power, the momentum no one sees. The 1,000 small victories that feel like nothing now, but will soon look like luck to everyone who wasn't there. Let them think it was sudden. Let them call it talent. Let them say you got lucky. You'll know better. You'll know the truth. That while they were watching, you were working. While they were performing, you were preparing. While they were waiting for the right time, you were becoming the right person. And by the time they see you shine, it'll be too late to understand your grind. Because the real transformation, the one that sticks, the one that echoes, the one that elevates everything, always happens when no one is watching. Always. In the pain, no one clapped for. In the decisions, no one praised. In the discipline, no one respected. In the tears, no one wiped. In the nights, no one stayed. That's where greatness is born. Not from noise, but from non-negotiable self-respect, from the belief that you matter enough to build yourself even when no one else believes you can. That is power. That is legacy. That is how you transform while nobody is watching. And here's what they'll never teach you in school, what no one will post on a quote card, what the world rarely celebrates. The most important changes you will ever make will be invisible at first. You'll show up to the gym and see no change. You'll rewrite your mindset and still feel afraid. You'll say no to distractions and still battle temptation. You'll wake up early, grind in silence, and no one will notice. That's where most people give up. They confuse visibility with value. They think because it's not loud, it's not working. But growth doesn't scream, it whispers. It whispers in sharper thoughts, in stronger boundaries, in clearer vision, in deeper peace, until one day you don't recognize yourself. Not because you've become someone else, but because you finally become you. Unfiltered, uncompromised, unapologetic. That's the reward of the silent climb. You don't just change your life, you reclaim your identity. And from there, life starts to orbit you differently. Not because of luck, not because of timing, but because of alignment. Alignment changes everything. When your thoughts align with your values, when your habits align with your vision, power. When your actions align with your purpose, momentum, and suddenly, you're no longer forcing growth. You're flowing in it. You're no longer chasing success. You're matching it. You're no longer searching for meaning. You are it. This is the life most never taste. Not because it's unreachable, but because it's uncomfortable. Because to reach it, you must let go of who clapped for you. You must let go of old identities that made you feel safe. You must let go of excuses dressed as reasons and step into the unknown, fueled not by certainty, but by conviction. You don't know exactly how it ends. You don't need to. You just need to know who you refuse to remain and who you are now willing to become. And once that decision is made, not wished for, not fantasized, but made, your life becomes a living prayer. Every step sacred. Every effort worship. Every day a vote for the future you are building in silence. And the silence becomes beautiful because you no longer need noise to feel alive. You have become your own confirmation. You stop waiting to be noticed. You stop needing to be understood. You stop craving the validation that once felt like oxygen, because now you breathe differently. You breathe from presence, from self-respect, from the knowing that your value is not up for debate. You don't just know who you are. You know what you're not anymore. Not a people pleaser, not a prisoner of doubt, not a watered down version of someone else's expectations. You've let that version die, quietly, without ceremony. And in that death, you were reborn, not into perfection, but into power, not into status, but into stability, not into ego, but into essence. Because real transformation doesn't make you loud. It makes you solid, unshakable, unhurried, untouchable. And when people finally see you, when they finally ask, how did you do it? They'll never understand the hours, the choices, the nights, the silence. They'll never see the versions of you that had to be buried, the fears you had to silence, the cravings you had to deny, the inner wars you had to win. But you will. You'll remember everything. And that remembrance is sacred. Because transformation isn't just becoming more. It's remembering who you were before the world taught you to be less. It's stripping away the noise until only truth remains. And in that truth, you find something more powerful than motivation. You find momentum, a current that no longer needs to be forced because it flows through you. And when that current is alive, when it is aligned, when you have cultivated it in the dark, tended it in silence, honored it with sacrifice, you become unstoppable. Not because the world allows it, but because your soul demands it. So you no longer chase timelines. You no longer panic in waiting seasons. You no longer compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. Because you know you're in the process. The sacred, lonely, often invisible process of becoming undeniable. And that is what you've been doing all along. Transforming, quietly, fiercely, relentlessly, while nobody was watching. And now, you don't just walk differently, you carry differently. Your posture has changed. Your presence has shifted. You no longer beg the world to make space for you. You become the space. You don't announce yourself. You don't explain your mission. You don't apologize for your progress. Because real transformation doesn't beg for attention, it commands it. Not with words, with weight. You carry the weight of discipline, the weight of silence endured, The weight of identity rebuilt. The weight of dreams defended in the absence of applause. That weight is not a burden, it's your crown. And you wear it, not on your head, but in your energy. Because when you've built yourself from the ground up, when you've stood in front of every excuse, every fear, every lazy version of yourself, and refused to surrender, you don't just walk with confidence, you walk with evidence. Evidence that you've trained when others rested, that you've risen when others retreated, that you've stayed true when no one else believed. And now, that work begins to speak. But you're not done, because true transformation is not an end. It's an agreement renewed every single day. You don't arrive. You recommit. You recommit when motivation disappears. You recommit when the spotlight fades. You recommit when the results take longer than expected, because you are no longer driven by outcome. You are driven by identity. And identity is not what you say you are. It's what you prove when no one's watching. It's what you repeat. It's what you endure. It's what you return to when life tests everything you've built. You are no longer chasing something outside of you. You are honoring something within you. And that shift, that sacred internal realignment, that's when you go from doing the work to becoming the work. You are no longer the builder, you are the embodiment. You are the standard, the proof, the presence, the one who transformed not for applause, not for acceptance, not for optics, but for the quiet satisfaction of knowing that you didn't quit on yourself, that you rose when no one asked you to, that you grew when no one expected you to, that you became while nobody was watching. And now you rise differently. You breathe differently. You dream differently. Because everything about you has changed not from the outside in, but from the inside out. You've built a life that no longer reacts to the world. It directs it. You no longer move from emotion, you move from vision. You no longer crave certainty. You operate from conviction. Because when you've trained in the dark, when you've forged discipline in the silence, when you've faced every demon without a witness, you don't need the world to believe in you. You believe in you. And that belief, it becomes magnetic. You start attracting people who value what you've built, not because of your name, but because of your nature. They feel your energy, your weight, your stillness, your precision. You no longer talk about your standards, you live them. And those who can't match it, they fall away on their own, not because you push them, because your frequency no longer tolerates what your old self once entertained. That's what real transformation does it. Quietly upgrades your life by upgrading your identity. And you didn't force it. You became it. Now, nothing pulls you off center. Not chaos. Not setbacks. Not noise. Not failure. Because you understand, failure isn't fatal. It's feedback. You've stopped fearing the fall. You've mastered the rise. You've built resilience the world can't measure because the world never saw your lowest moments. It never saw the nights you cried alone but woke up anyway. It never saw the dreams you buried just to survive and the courage it took to dig them back up. They didn't see your silence. But your silence built something they'll never forget. Because now, you move with legacy. You move with the awareness that your life is more than a project. It's a message. A message written in sweat, in scars, in solitude. And one day someone will ask you, how did you become this? And you'll smile, not because you have a perfect answer, but because you remember the exact moment you decided, I'm done waiting, I'm done explaining, I'm done hiding. I'm transforming while nobody is watching. So now you walk forward not into comfort, but into command. You command your days. You command your focus. You command your future, not with force, but with foundation. Because everything you've built, all the hours, the tears, the effort, no one applauded it, lives in you now. It walks with you. You don't need to prove it. You are it. And now you carry something most never find. Inner peace, purchased through personal war. The kind of peace that doesn't disappear when life gets loud. The kind that stays steady through storms. The kind that knows you've already done the hard part. You didn't quit when no one was watching. And that one decision, that sacred decision to grow when no one cared, to rise when no one noticed, changed everything. Because now, the world is starting to see what you saw all along. Not because you shouted, but because you showed up. You became the woman who built herself, who stopped waiting to be chosen, who no longer needed permission to become powerful, who rewrote every limitation handed down to her. And you didn't do it for applause. You did it for alignment, for freedom, for the woman inside who whispered, "We are made for more." And finally, you listened. So let this be your vow, that no matter who doubts, who leaves, who forgets, who misunderstands, you will never abandon yourself again. You'll stay. You'll rise. You'll evolve. Not once, not just when it's easy, but every single day. Because now you understand the most powerful truth of all. You don't need a stage to be worthy. You don't need witnesses to be real. You don't need anyone to see you when you've already seen yourself. And that's what it means to transform while nobody is watching, to rise in silence, to become in darkness, to prepare in obscurity until one day the world meets the version of you that you've already been building. And they will call it sudden. They will call it lucky. They will call it destiny. But you will know the truth. You earned it. Every inch, every scar, every step, alone, unseen, but now unforgettable. And now you're not just unforgettable, you're unshakable because you've already endured the test that breaks most people. You kept going when nobody cared. You stayed faithful to the grind that paid you nothing at first. You built your character in silence while the world was busy chasing approval. And now you carry depth they can't fake. You radiate confidence they can't buy. You move with certainty they can't explain. Because this is what happens when you build your value internally before the world ever gives you credit. You become immune to trends, unaffected by noise, free from the addiction of being liked. You don't follow the crowd because you outgrew the crowd. You've entered a different realm now, where focus is sacred, where peace is power, where your presence is louder than performance. And this is what makes you different. While most are trying to be seen, you became someone worth seeing. While they post to prove, you act to evolve. While they perform for attention, you refine in silence. And that refinement, that's the edge. Because now you don't just set goals, you live standards. You don't just talk success, you embody alignment. You don't just want results. You demand congruence between who you say you are and how you live when no one's looking. And that gap between identity and action no longer exists. You've closed it. You've sealed it. You've become it. And this is where you become unstoppable. Not because the world lets you win, but because you've already won within. Your discipline is no longer temporary. Your self-respect is no longer optional. Your vision is no longer negotiable. And when the storms come, and they will, you don't break, because your roots were planted in private. Before the light, before the recognition, before the reward, you were already solid. You were already whole. You were already ready because you trained in silence, because you rose when no one noticed, because you transformed while nobody was watching. And now you understand what few ever will, that the most sacred transformation is the one you never broadcast. The most powerful growth is the kind you don't post about. The truest strength is forged in moments so quiet, so personal, no one even knows they happened. But you know, You know about the early mornings where you chose to rise instead of rationalize. You know the nights where your dreams were louder than your doubts. You know the tears you wiped yourself, the boundaries you enforced without applause, the temptations you defeated in complete obscurity. You've done what most are too afraid to do. You stopped running from yourself. You turned inward. You did the work. You owned the pain. You rewrote the script. And now you wear a different kind of confidence, the kind that doesn't need to prove, doesn't need to chase, doesn't need to explain. It just is. A quiet certainty, an anchored presence, a knowing that no matter what happens, you won't fold. Because you're no longer performing for the world. You're performing for the promise you made to yourself. And that promise, it wasn't about glory. It was about becoming someone you respect when no one else is around. This is the real flex. Not the lifestyle, not the status, not the spotlight. It's being able to stand alone in a room with your soul and say, I'm proud of who I am becoming. That is rare. And if you've tasted that even once, then you already know. Nothing the world gives you will ever compare to the peace that comes from honoring your own evolution. So stay on the path. Keep sharpening. Keep simplifying. Keep removing everything that doesn't serve the next version of you. Not out of fear, not out of pressure, but because you finally know your worth. You finally see your power. You finally trust your path. And the best part? You don't need to prove that to anyone because you proved it to yourself in silence, in sacrifice, in sweat, in stillness. You proved it the moment you decided to transform, not when it was convenient, but when it was unseen. So now, here you are, standing not at the end of the road, but at the beginning of something eternal. Because transformation doesn't end. It evolves. It deepens. It expands. It becomes who you are, not just what you do. And the world may never fully understand it. They may never see the version of you that rose from the ashes of self-doubt. They may never know the hours, the healing, the heartbreak, the hunger that molded you. They may never recognize the countless rebirths you endured behind closed doors. But you will, and that is enough. Because the reward was never the recognition. The reward was becoming someone who no longer needs it. The reward was building a self so powerful, so present, so peaceful, that nothing external could ever shake it again. You didn't just transform. You remembered. You remembered who you were before the world told you who to be. You remembered your voice beneath the noise, your truth beneath the trauma, your power beneath the patterns. You peeled it all back, layer by layer, until only one thing remained. You, the real you. And that version, she's unbuyable, unbreakable, undeniable. So walk now, not for the crowd, not for the outcome, but for the vow. The vow you made in the quiet. The one no one heard. The one that changed everything. I will rise in silence. I will build in shadows. I will honor myself even if no one ever sees it. Because I see it. Because you see it. And because now, the world will feel it not through your words, but through your walk. This is your time. Not because someone gave it to you, but because you claimed it in the dark. This is who you became. While nobody was watching. The war is not out there. It never was. It's not in the economy. It's not in the politics. It's not in your competitors, your critics, or your circumstances. The war is within. The battlefield is your mind. And until you win there, you will lose everywhere else. Because a man can have every opportunity in the world, but if his mind is undisciplined, he will sabotage every single one. A woman can have gifts, connections, talent, even time, but if her thoughts are against her, her life will be too. The mind is not your servant by default. It is a wild animal. It chases fear. It feeds on doubt. It latches on to shame. It magnifies problems and minimizes potential. Left unchecked, it will turn a sunrise into a storm and a challenge into a coffin. This is why your first and greatest work is not your goals, not your business, not your brand. It's your mind. You must learn to rule it like a kingdom. Because if you don't, it will rule you like a tyrant. You must learn to recognize its voice, the voice of the imposter, the victim, the saboteur, and you must rise above it like a general standing over chaos, refusing to bow to panic. You must decide every day what thoughts are allowed to live in you. Most people never make that decision. They let their mind run wild, untamed, unchecked. They believe every thought is truth, every fear is prophecy, every doubt is a mirror. And then they wonder why they're exhausted, stuck, scattered, and small. But not you. You're waking up now. You're beginning to see that your greatest power is not what happens to you, but how you respond. And response begins in the mind. So ask yourself, what thoughts have you allowed to become your identity? What inner dialogue have you rehearsed so often you now believe it's truth? What mental habits have become your autopilot, dragging you through days of anxiety, distraction, and hesitation? It's time to reclaim the throne, to take your mind off autopilot and back into deliberate command. Because you were not created to be at the mercy of emotions, impulses, or internal noise. You were created to lead yourself. And that leadership starts not in your actions, but in your awareness. The mind is not evil. It's just untrained. And what you don't train, trains you. So if you don't teach your mind where to focus, it will fixate on the worst. If you don't program it with truth, it will default to fear. If you don't plant thoughts of growth, power, peace, it will grow weeds of scarcity, shame, and regret. You must become the gardener. You must decide what lives in the soil of your subconscious. Because your outer world will always reflect your inner conditioning. Every habit, every pattern, every relationship, every dollar, every decision, all of it echoes what you believe. And what you believe is nothing more than what you've repeated to yourself consciously or unconsciously 1,000 times. So here's the truth no one taught you in school. You can change the script. You can interrupt the thought. You can reject the belief. You can break the loop. You can stop the spiral. And you can train your mind to serve your future instead of your fear. This is not some luxury reserved for monks or gurus. This is survival. This is success. This is how legends are made, not by accident, but by alignment. By mastering the mind before the mind masters them. They don't wake up hoping for clarity, they generate it. They don't wish for confidence, they build it through inner language. They don't avoid fear, they face it, challenge it, interrogate it, and transform it into fuel. And you can do the same. You must do the same. Because until you do, nothing else will matter. Your strategies won't stick. Your vision won't last. Your goals will become ghosts haunting you, but never becoming real. Because everything begins and ends in the mind. The thoughts you entertain are the life you create. So take your mind back. Train it like a soldier. Feed it like a temple. Guard it like a fortress. Lead it like a nation. Because that mind, your mind, holds the keys to every door you've ever wanted to walk through. The question is, who's holding those keys? Is it you? Or is it the voice of fear? Is it the disciplined, future-focused version of you? Or is it the lazy, reactive shadow of who you used to be? That's the battle. That's the war. And until you win there, no victory will feel real. No success will feel safe. No dream will last. But if you do win there, if you master the mind, there is nothing in this world you cannot build, become, or break through. Because once the mind obeys, everything else falls in line. Once the mind obeys, the body follows. The habits align. The discipline locks in. The distractions lose their flavor. The excuses dissolve under the heat of your focus. And suddenly, what once felt impossible becomes inevitable. Because when your mind is mastered, the war is already won before you step foot onto the battlefield. This is why the great ones don't fear pressure. They've already overcome something far heavier, themselves. They've battled doubt in the silence. They've endured storms in the dark. They've stood in front of the mirror and refused to be lied to by their limitations. And every time their old self whispered, "You can't," they answered back, "Watch me." You must speak to your mind like that. Not passively, not with politeness, but with power. Because your mind is listening. It is always listening. And if you feed it confusion, it will give you chaos. If you feed it clarity, it will give you command. If you tell it you're tired, it will shut down. But if you tell it you're ready, it will open gates inside you that you didn't even know were there. You must train it daily. Not once, not when it's convenient. Every day. Because your mind does not stay strong by accident, it stays strong by repetition. Just like muscles. Just like habits. Just like mastery. And you don't train it once in the morning and then forget about it. You train it all day long. With every choice. With every reaction. With every moment of silence where your thoughts try to run the show again. You step in. You interrupt. You redirect. That's how warriors are built, one thought at a time. You must become the gatekeeper, standing watch over what gets in. Because every thought that enters your mind is either building your destiny or breaking it. There is no neutral. There is no idle. Every thought has a trajectory. It either pushes you forward or pulls you down. And if you don't choose them consciously, they will choose you. They'll choose you based on your past, based on your pain, based on the world's noise. And before you know it, you're living a life that isn't yours, thinking thoughts that aren't yours, fighting battles that never should have been yours. But that ends now. From this moment forward, you reclaim command. You reclaim authorship of your own mental script. And if that means rewiring everything you've been taught, so be it. If it means deleting the lies you've lived under, do it. If it means sitting in silence until the chaos dies down, then sit in that silence like a throne, because the silence is where the work begins. Not the motivational high, not the external noise, not the surface level affirmations that never touch your soul. The real work, it starts when you face the thoughts you've avoided. When you pull them out into the light and ask, who gave you permission to live in my mind? What have you cost me? What have you stolen from my future? And then you evict them. You replace them. You install truth. You install power. You install a vision that is so vivid, so magnetic, so aligned with who you are becoming, that every lie has no choice but to flee. Because darkness cannot survive where light stands firm. And that's who you are now. You are not your fear. You are not your doubt. You are not the version of you that spirals when things get hard. You are the one who stays, who decides, who leads, who masters, who commands. And from this point forward, your mind is no longer your master. It is your servant. It will work for your dreams. It will reinforce your standards. It will defend your peace because you have taken your rightful place on the throne. And you will not be moved. You will not be moved, not by fear, not by fatigue, not by fleeting emotions that try to convince you today is the day to quit. Because you've tasted alignment. You've felt the fire that comes from living on purpose, from thinking on purpose, from choosing your thoughts with the same precision an architect chooses his foundation. And now, you build a mind that is fortified, not just focused, fortified, because focus gets shaken by distraction. But fortification, that's when your mind becomes a wall. Nothing can penetrate without your permission. You think you need more motivation? You don't. You need mental security. You need to know that when adversity hits, your thoughts don't abandon you. You need to know that when delay shows up, your faith doesn't collapse. You need to know that your internal world is so rehearsed in strength, in vision, in clarity, that no external storm can take you back to smallness. This is the inner gym. This is where elite thinking is forged. When others are scrolling, you're training. When others are comparing, you're creating. When others are triggered, you're tactical. Because your mind is not for rent, not to fear, not to doubt, not to scarcity or self-sabotage. It belongs to you. And if you don't own it, someone else will. Society will. Marketing will. Old trauma will. That voice from years ago will. And you'll be living a life that serves their narrative, not your mission. You have to fight for it. Every morning, before your feet touch the ground, command your mind. Before the noise of the world gets in, declare who you are. Before fear creeps in, anchor your identity in truth. Not in feelings, not in followers, not in feedback, in truth. Because when you anchor to truth, storms lose their grip. Disappointment loses its sting. Setbacks become signals instead of sentences. You see clearly, because a trained mind sees through the fog. It filters the lies. It sniffs out the traps. It reminds you, you are not your thoughts. You are the thinker. You are not your emotions. You are the observer. You are not what happens. You are what you choose to make of it. And once you know that, truly know it, you are free. Free from the prison of your past. Free from the panic of uncertainty. Free from the chaos of scattered thinking. And in that freedom, there is fury. The kind of fury that doesn't destroy, it builds. It builds businesses. It builds bodies. It builds movements. It builds futures. Because now, your mind is not just under control. It's under commission. It's been reassigned. It doesn't just protect you from danger. It propels you toward destiny. And every thought that used to break you now becomes brickwork in your empire. Every doubt you used to drown in now becomes data that sharpens your strategy. Every old voice that said, not you, now echoes in a chamber you no longer live in. You've changed the locks. You've changed the narrative. You've changed the terms of engagement. And from here forward, every step you take is not random. It's routed through a mind that has been reclaimed. A mind no longer enslaved by yesterday's wiring, but renewed, rebuilt, reforged in fire. And fire purifies. It burns away illusion. It strips the mind of its lies, of its limitations, of its laziness, until all that remains is truth, forged into steel, the kind of steel that does not bend when life tests you, when people doubt you, when the world forgets you. You don't need to be remembered right now. You need to become unforgettable. And that begins in thought, not action. Action follows thought. Behavior follows belief. Life follows language. So listen to what you tell yourself when it's quiet. Are your words bricks or blades? Are you building yourself or breaking yourself every time you think? Because here's what most never grasp. You become whatever you repeat. The mind doesn't differentiate between truth and repetition. It believes what it hears, most especially when it comes from you. So if your daily soundtrack is hesitation, guilt, doubt, fear, your life will mirror that chaos. But if your mind wakes up to truth, to vision, to ownership, to purpose, your life will organize itself around that alignment. That is the secret. Control the narrative, and you control the outcome. Dominate your thoughts, and you dominate your path. You don't need more hours in a day. You need more order in your mind, because a distracted mind will turn a 24-hour day into a disaster. But a trained mind, it can turn 1 hour into an empire. And this is the difference between potential and power. Potential sits in chaos. Power is focused, directed, ruthless. And now it's your time to walk in that power, to become the architect of your thought life, to stop renting your mental space to opinions and start designing it like a palace. What goes on your walls? What music plays in your head? What conversations are allowed inside? What thoughts sit at your mental table? If you don't decide, the world will. And the world doesn't care about your greatness. The world profits off your confusion. So you must take it back, brick by brick, breath by breath, discipline by discipline, until your mind becomes a fortress of forward motion, not a museum of pain, not a jail of self-doubt. a command center for your highest self. That's where your legacy begins. Not in action. In thinking, that leads to right action. Because once your thoughts are aligned, your words will follow. Your habits will follow. Your finances will follow. Your relationships, your boundaries, your direction, all of it follows thought. So don't ask, what should I do today? Ask, what thoughts must I hold today? Don't ask, what should I fix out there? Ask, what must I command in here? Because the battlefield was never out there. It's always been here. And now, you're winning. And winning here in the hidden, silent, sacred chambers of the mind is the only victory that guarantees all others. You can fake strength on the outside. You can build a body. You can wear wealth. You can talk the talk. But if the voice inside your head doesn't honor your greatness, eventually the mask will slip and everything will collapse beneath the weight of what you never mastered, your own mind. You don't need to pretend anymore. You need to possess. Not a persona, but presence. Not a strategy, but sovereignty. Because sovereignty means nothing controls you unless you allow it. And the most dangerous thing you've ever allowed to control you wasn't another person. It was a thought. One single thought. I'm not good enough. It's too late for me. I'll never get there. That thought dug its roots in. It grew branches that touched everything. And before you knew it, you were making decisions through a lens of limitation, avoiding risk, settling for crumbs, replaying old wounds like they were gospel. But not anymore. That thought is on trial now. You're holding it up to the light and demanding evidence, demanding truth. Because if it's not rooted in who you can become, it's not worthy to stay. You don't argue with it. You evict it. You don't entertain it. You replace it. Because you've built something stronger, a new inner code, a new internal environment where only power is permitted, only clarity, only courage, only creation. Because when you control your mind, you create the future before it happens. You walk like it's already done. You speak like it's already real. You move like your destiny is not a matter of chance, it's a matter of choice. And every choice begins in thought. So think with intention. Think with intensity. Think with identity. Because your thoughts don't just influence your life, they are your life. And the moment you grasp that, truly grasp that you are no longer a product of your past, you are the producer of your future. You are the architect of the reality you once thought was impossible. You are the author of a story no one else was qualified to write. So write it with precision, with conviction, with zero tolerance for mental parasites. You've given them enough time, enough space, enough voice. Now they're gone. And in their place, steel, fire, vision, peace, unshakable, undeniable command. This is the new you, not created by chance, but forged by decision and protected by a mind that no longer breaks under pressure because it's built to handle power. Because you didn't just learn how to survive your mind, you learned how to master it. And now your life is yours. Yours fully, finally, and without apology. No longer driven by impulses that hijack your day. No longer led by doubts that disguise themselves as logic. No longer pulled by voices that echo your fears louder than your faith. You now move with intention, not reaction. You now speak from alignment, not anxiety. You now choose deliberately what thoughts get to breathe inside your brain. And when you live like this, you start to feel it. That edge, that clarity, that power humming just beneath your skin. Not loud, not frantic certain. You walk into the same world, but everything is different. Because you're different. You're not hoping anymore. You're not waiting for confidence to magically appear. You're commanding it through repetition, through environment, through ruthless mental hygiene. You no longer entertain thoughts that contradict your mission. You no longer give time to ideas that drain your energy. You no longer surrender your peace for the comfort of familiar negativity. Because you know now everything is mindset. Your future is mindset. Your income is mindset. Your discipline, your love life, your legacy, all of it, mindset. And the moment you take full ownership of that is the moment your excuses become irrelevant. You don't need more time. You don't need better conditions. You don't need approval. You need mastery of the mind. And that mastery, it begins with choice. Not once, every moment, every thought, every time the old pattern whispers its familiar song, you must choose not to dance. You must choose silence. You must choose strength. You must choose the thought that aligns with the you you're becoming, not the version you've already buried. Because this is how transformation happens. Not in massive leaps, not in emotional highs, but in microscopic mental pivots. The kind nobody sees. The kind nobody applauds. The kind where you say no to a thought that would have owned you a year ago. That is victory. That is power. That is how a human being becomes unrecognizable to their former self. And soon, the life around you will shift. It won't be magic. It won't be luck. It will be the natural consequence of a mind that no longer tolerates anything less than alignment with truth. You won't have to fake confidence. You'll live in it. You won't have to chase clarity. You'll create it. You won't have to beg for peace. You'll become it. Because now, you don't just control your mind. You own it. And that, right there, is the beginning of everything. So now you walk through the world with a new kind of silence. Not the silence of uncertainty, but the silence of someone who no longer negotiates with chaos. The silence of someone who knows the battle was won the moment they claimed authority over their mind. You no longer need to scream to be heard. You no longer need to prove yourself in every room. You no longer need to defend your decisions to people who still wrestle with their own, because peace has become your platform. Discipline has become your compass. And clarity hard won. Battle-forged clarity has become your crown. You look around and realize most are still asleep. Not because they want to be, but because no one ever taught them how to wake up. No one ever told them that every toxic pattern, every cycle of sabotage, every moment of despair, all of it can be traced back to an untrained mind. And now, now you carry a responsibility, not just to build yourself, but to become the example. To live in such a way that your life speaks louder than their doubts. To walk with such focus that it calls others to rise just by watching you. Because this world doesn't need more noise. It needs more mental leaders. More people who think for themselves. More people who choose thoughts that build, not break. Who pause before reacting. Who create before consuming. Who remember every single day that your mind is not a mirror of circumstance, it is a creator of circumstance. And when you live like this, you start to see what's possible. Not just for you, but for everyone watching you, wondering if this level of control, this level of calm, this level of command is real. It is. It's not perfect. It's not easy, but it's yours because you earned it. You didn't wait for someone to fix your life. You didn't blame your past. You didn't drown in fear. You stood up. You stared your thoughts in the face and said, "You don't run me anymore." You repeated truth when it didn't feel true. You acted with power when your mind begged for comfort. You showed up again and again until the part of you that used to rule you had no choice but to bow. And now you are the ruler, the gatekeeper, the architect, the commander of your mind. And from here forward, everything you build, your wealth, your health, your impact, your legacy will rest on the foundation you just forged. Not of concrete, not of steel, but of thought. Disciplined, directed, dominant. This is the new you. And this is how it all begins. Not with a plan, not with a perfect system, but with one bold final decision. I control my mind. And because I control my mind, I control my life.